You are listening to Spiritual Insurgency with Jason Lupo and Aaron Lujan, a show that brings reckoning to today's culture and the impact on the body of the church. No topic is off the table on the quest to take back our churches. Join Jason and Aaron and swim against the current of the modern culture.
Welcome to Spiritual Insurgency. I'm Jason Lupo here with my co-host Aaron Lujan.
Good morning, Jason.
All right, this is like some breaking news, but really we're going to give some preface to the whole thing. So Tina Peters, the former Mesa County clerk and recorder who was sentenced last year to 9 years in jail for auditing her own election systems. Now, there's a whole lot of problems with that. But anyways, she is demanding her release from jail as she challenges her election interference convictions. This is a report from CBS News. She's citing major health concerns as part of her demand for release as she awaits the response to her appeal. All right. So on February 7th, court records show Peters, 69 years old, filed her new application with the U.S. District Court for the District of Colorado. Peters was originally convicted in August 2024 on charges related to election interference crimes in Mesa County while she was clerk during the 2020 general election and sentenced in October. According to the application in parts, Peters is monitored for recurrence of her lung cancer and suffers from fibromyalgia. Since she has been incarcerated, her health has deteriorated. As her pastor has observed, her physical vigor and cognitive function has declined. She is pale, has lost weight, and has difficulties with memory and word finding. Now, this story gets more interesting because breaking news, Joe Altman says, quote unquote, on Facebook, here we go, Tina Peters filed a writ of habeas corpus with allegations of misconduct involving the sheriff. Retaliation commences. They attempted to move Tina to a pod that is called the incentive pod, and she declined. They then told her if she did not accept the promotion, quote unquote, she would be written up. The incentive pod is an open area where 15 or so people are put together. The outcome is it is not as safe as a cell with those she may or may not trust. For the moment, let's say she feels safer where she is, after months of being targeted by guards and other prisoners. Fast forward to last night, I have now gotten unconfirmed reports that they have sent Tina to solitary confinement for 27 days as her punishment. Punishment for filing legal proceedings. Punishment for standing up against the criminal cartels. Imagine a world where they are allowed to bully and abuse a 69-year-old Gold Star mom who risks it all to uncover the misdeeds of the criminal cartel that includes Dominion voting and their diabolical leadership. It includes the judges, the DA, the AG, the Colorado Secretary of State, and even the governor of Colorado, saying free Tina Peters is not enough. Then he tags Donald Trump and Pam Bondi. When are we going to bring one of our own home? As important as all that we are prioritizing is setting the stage for the prosecution of the criminals in Colorado and getting Tina out of this hell has to take its place at the front of all of this. Free Tina Peters. Wow.
Isaiah chapter 5, verse 20. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. That's what I have to say about that.
Yeah. Well, and this is the case, like if we wanted to go further in depth, this is a case where the Secretary of State essentially tampered with all the evidence.
Right.
So as soon as they started going after Tina Peters and forcibly removing her from her office that she was elected to serve
by the people,
they took the Dominion machines and essentially wiped them clear with an update. Mm-hmm. So all the evidence that Tina Peters had is gone. And then the judge basically didn't allow for next to near any evidence to be admissible on Tina Peters' side. Now, take this in conjunction with what the Secretary of State did in this last election cycle where she released all the BIOS passwords. Mm-hmm. Tina Peters, the only thing that was released in that case that was sensitive was a part of one BIOS password, not even the whole thing. And yet the Secretary of State's office released all of the BIOS passwords for the entire state of Colorado. But here we have basically a woman who's 69 years old, a Gold Star grandmother and mother who has been thrown in jail for not criminal, like not a, what's it called? Not, yes, it's criminal according to the Colorado state, but not violent crimes for 9 years.
And I think the most interesting aspect of this story is how this compares to Jenna Griswold's behavior. And I know you're a lot more informed than I am. It's basically they're punishing Tina Peters as the way they should have punished Jenna Griswold, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Because what did Jenna Griswold do in comparison?
So much more.
Right.
Jenna Griswold brought a level of insecurity to those voting in the state of Colorado. And it is important to note that in compared to previous election cycles, Colorado is the only state that did not move right. And I'm not saying vote red. I'm not saying it's the only state that didn't vote for Trump. I'm saying that in every state that was Democratic, other than the state of Colorado, even if they ended up voting for Kamala Harris, the percentages shifted right. So
the observable inference is that there was corruption in Colorado.
Very well could have been. That's something that, is fine to say. Like, we see the data. The data is there. We're making an analysis on the data. Now, it doesn't mean necessarily, yes, once again, correlation doesn't always imply causation. But at the same time, if you look at the entire state or the entire country and go, every single state moved right except Colorado, you go, oh, there's something wrong here.
It's a statistical anomaly.
Yes, it is. It's an outlier.
Sure.
It's an outlier.
And it makes you go,
It does make you go, I agree. Especially when BIOS passwords are being released. We have... Now, the Secretary of State didn't just go after Tina Peters. It's important to remember that any clerk and recorder that questioned the safety or integrity of our elections was either threatened or charged with crimes.
Questions.
Yes, question.
These are mafiosos, bro.
If they questioned it, if they said, we don't want to do this, we don't want to use Dominion voting systems, whatever, Jenna Griswold went after him. Like, this is... Not to mention that there's like multiple parts of this argument, but at the end of the day, like, if we cannot question our election systems, what are you hiding?
Exactly.
Like, that's what we want to know. And I give huge credit right now. I had the opportunity. I was serving as the chair of the teller committee for the El Paso County GOP when we just ran our reorg meeting and elected a new chair and vice chair and secretary and all that. And bonus members for the state GOP. And I had the opportunity to actually go and scan the ballots at the El Paso County Clerk and Recorder's office and see how the entire system works. And I give a lot of credit to Steve Schleicher and his Steve Schleicher and his team down at the El Paso County Clerk and Recorder's office. They tried to be as transparent as humanly possible and explain the systems to us and things like that. And just taking the time to do that is really cool.
It's good faith.
It's good faith. Now, do I still believe that there's a chance that there's still room for impropriety to happen? Well, yeah.
Sure.
Can you create a foolproof system? No. I don't think it's possible. So, do I still love the fact that we're using these machines? No, I don't. Do I still love the fact that dead people are getting ballots? No, I don't. People. But at the same time, I believe that at the end of the day, these jails and our prisons really should be for violent criminals, not for, mothers and old ladies that quote unquote created some sort of crime. Like they found a crime, right? It was Stalin that said, "Show me the man, and I'll show you the crime."
Right.
Like, that's what they're doing to these people. They're finding a reason to prosecute them, yet they're releasing the people that are doped up, creating damage to property, breaking into buildings, petty theft. Like, they issue them a ticket, let them walk away, and then they never show up to court.
And I think it's also important to note, Jason, that this election interference activity is modus operandi of tyrannical regimes. if we take a quick look at, say, the last 30, 40 years of the CIA and our foreign policy has been, our primary weapon is to interfere with elections. The color revolution that occurred in Ukraine under the Obama administration and then Secretary of State Victoria Nuland was all about interfering with the election, subverting the will of the people, and putting in the people that they wanted. This is, as I said a moment ago, modus operandi. So I don't want to talk about this as if like, oh, what is this new thing that's happening? And, oh, what's going on? When for the last arguably 30, 40 years, this has been our primary this has been in our Swiss knife for a long time. So I just want to contextualize this conversation. We are under an attack by a tyrannical regime, and their primary strategy is to interfere with elections. So that's, I think, important to note.
Yeah, this is this is happening all across the world, and what's interesting is in many of these places that the U.S. has helped them run free and fair elections.
Free and fair elections, safe and effective elections,
and half the places that I think even Venezuela running Dominion voting systems.
Venezuela, yeah, no, they were running Dominion.
Yeah, so it's like there's a bigger thing at play.
It's just come home. That's all. They gotten really good at this overseas, and now they're just bringing it back to America.
We need to see, like, Doge needs to go investigate. We want to see the payments that have been made to Dominion voting systems, run back election services, all of these different election services. I want to know how much we're spending on this stuff. Like, the American people deserve to know.
They do deserve to know, and they deserve to know all the back pay and political contributions that are going back and forth with Dominion.
Well, that's the $4.7 trillion that's not earmarked for anything that we've just written checks for.
Jason's referencing the fact that Doge uncovered $4.7 trillion of untraceable payments out of the U.S. Treasury. The field that was to indicate what the purpose was of this payment was left blank. So 4.7 trillion, and that's with the T, ladies and gentlemen, is unaccountable.
Yep.
Your money.
Yep.
Good times.
Great times. At the end of the day, like, Doge, I love this. You know, if you've listened on the air, you know how much I love Doge.
He's a Doger.
Like, I love Doge. I think it is the greatest thing to ever come out of a presidency in our lifetime, and probably in this nation's lifetime.
Dogelicious.
It's how great it is. But until people start getting prosecuted for gigantic amounts of theft of money, we haven't gone far enough.
Yeah, Doge is basically the part of the investigation where they go get the judge warrant. They'll go get a warrant from the judge. But this isn't actually going to be complete until I see handcuffs. And that's exactly what I've been thinking about, Jason, is I've been looking at this movie, and I call it a movie. You know, we're a couple weeks into this new administration, and there's so much energy and momentum and rah-rah, and America's so back and all this because we're uncovering all these crimes. Uncovering crimes is part one. Prosecuting crimes is part two.
Yeah. Well, and all these people are sitting on the sideline and going like, we're not going to receive our checks for 4 years. Mm-hmm. Don't worry, when we get a Democrat back in the office, we'll receive our checks for circumcisions in Mumbai or whatever it is. Where was it?
I don't know, but circumcisions in Mumbai.
$25 million for circumcisions in Mumbai or something like that.
Well, they were also studying transgenderism among animals.
Oh, my favorite is the transgender Sesame Street for Iraqis.
They're putting Babylon Bee out of business right now.
It's just like, yeah, it's like real life Babylon. You just look at it and you're like, how could we possibly have done that? Like, who approved this? Right.
I think what they're doing is we have a bunch of criminal money launderers who sit around a table and say, what is the most ridiculous thing we can think of to launder money?
Well, and the problem is that this money's already gone.
Right.
In a lot of respects.
Yeah.
So the American people, yeah, we're going to save money in the future, but what about the money that's been misspent in the past? And that's the problem.
Who's going to be held accountable, and when is justice going to be served for these crimes?
Yeah. And the thing about it is, and I'm pretty sure we're going to get to Ukraine today.
Oh, yeah.
Because that is, I mean, go Trump, go. But you just look at this stuff and you're like, okay, it is time that this become uncovered, but it's too late in a lot of respects.
Sure.
We've already wasted the taxpayers' money. And so when it comes to this idea of like Doge payments, I don't know where I stand. Like at one point, yeah, give the money back to the taxpayer. But at the next step, we're staring down the barrel of $37 trillion in national debt.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Trump needs to look at some of this debt and go like, yeah, we're not paying that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, let's default on some of the stuff that we owe to foreign countries. Like, sorry, we're taking this off our books. We're not paying it. Like,
I will take Doge very seriously. And I like everything that I'm seeing. But there's going to be two requirements for me, Jason, for me to actually be as big of a fan as Doge as you are. Number one, as we have agreed upon, people need to be held accountable. Justice needs to get served. Number two, they need to audit the Federal Reserve. Because I was listening to the PBD podcast the other day, and they confirmed the question we were asking last week: is the Federal Reserve eligible to be audited by Doge? And according to the cast over at PBD's podcast, the answer is yes, absolutely. Now they have deflected, of course, that we're everybody here works here really hard. Trust us. We don't need to be accountable to you people, because just kind of. To remind our listeners, it's the Federal Reserve that's responsible for inflation. When you increase the money supply, that's generally the primary contributing factor to inflationary economic conditions. And as we know through the last, probably going back to the Obama years, we printed out of thin air. Federal Reserve calls it quantitative easing, trillions and trillions of trillions of dollars. You can't produce trillions of digital money into an economy and not expect repercussions. That's the reason why I'm paying $18 for a burrito that used to cost $4 10 years ago. Yep. So let's audit the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you that Doge probably will be able to audit the Federal Reserve, but I don't think it's going to be as easy as whatever PD podcast is.
Patrick Bet David, man, come on now.
PDB. Anyways, I think that they're going to have a court battle looming over that. But ultimately, I'd love to see the Fed disappear.
Oh, absolutely. And the Fed, Rand Paul, his father, Ron Paul, were huge advocates of ending the Fed. They educated me on the fact that it's the Federal Reserve that's responsible for a lot of the pain that we experience. I
think that... what the creature from Jekyll Island comes to mind. But anyways, I think what is going to be really interesting, and I think what the American people are waiting for, is what's at Fort Knox? Does the gold still exist?
I want to do a Facebook Live at Fort Knox.
I mean, it would be great. I think that who was going to go? Kristi Noem was going to attend the Doge investigation at Fort Knox.
Give that woman a steak, man. She looks anorexic as all hell.
Well, I guess here's the bad joke. I guess we know that after she killed her dog, she didn't eat it.
That's true.
They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats.
All right, on that note, let's take a brief time out. When we come back, we are going to talk about the city of Denver and 16th Street Mall and their absolutely atrocious handling of the homelessness crisis. Just don't go anywhere. Stay with us.
Teamwork is at the core of any successful organization. Full Armor Sports, led by national champion coach Jason Lupo, is now registering for school year sports programs. Full Armor is a multi-sport teaching and training organization with homeschool options available. All of Full Armor sports coaches are certified and experts in their field. Full Armor's coaches combine for over 500 years of coaching experience. They will help your kids gain fundamental skills, the concepts of teamwork, essential to being successful throughout their lives. Multiple sports options are available now, from swimming, softball and volleyball, to powerlifting and youth MMA. The faith-based approach to making sports fun and productive are a great choice for your kids at Full Armor Sports Teams.
Welcome to Spiritual Insurgency. I'm Jason Lupo here with my co-host Aaron Lujan.
Good morning, Jason Lupo.
All right, so we talked about the Tina Peters case. We talked about Doge. What is next? Oh, yeah, that's right. The city of Denver.
City of Denver. We're in Colorado, Jason.
We are.
Let's talk to these Denverites and these Coloradans.
Even if you're not in Colorado listening to this is probably happening in your hometown,
the
too.
principle applies
yeah.
across the country.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
What is it?
Tell us the story.
Oh, I'm supposed to know about it?
Well, you got the article
That's right.
pulled up. 16th Street Mall. Here you go. Go for
16th
it.
Street Mall is supposed to be rebranded and is supposed to experience a revitalization through the investments to the tune of $1.9 million. Jason was educating me on the way down here because I try to avoid Denver as much as I possibly can. That the 16th Street Mall was a really nice place. It was a little oasis. It was a little place you could take the kids to go grab a ice cream cone and kind of stroll and not have to worry about your wife getting assaulted. And apparently that's changed. Apparently they invited in the people that we call unhoused.
Homeless?
Yes, they're unhoused, sir.
Unhoused, okay.
There is not a house over their brains.
Sorry, Karen.
So there's now this effort to be able to get people back, and they're going to spend a bunch of taxpayer dollars. I'm assuming taxpayer dollars? Maybe I shouldn't say that. I don't know.
Oh, these are taxpayer dollars.
They are taxpayer
what
dollars.
What other dollars would they have?
Private investment?
No.
No.
Not
The smartest private investors use tax dollars, right?
Exactly.
Ask NFL owners. So you have a situation now where we have this place that used to be great, and then they let it get destroyed due to bad policy. And then now they're going to use your money to the tune of almost $2 million to fix it, which I don't think is going to fix anything, because unless you have armed guards or unless you solve the homeless crisis, you're going to still have homeless people there.
Well, here's the situation. They just spent millions of dollars renovating 16th Street Mall, which took them far longer than it ever should. Had it not have been a government contract, anybody in the private sector would be like, why is this job not done? Just like the roads, right?
Right.
Why does it take this long to get this road done? Well, it's a government contract.
Sure.
It's government contract work. What do we care? Right? We have to drag it out as long as possible and sit around so that we can, number one, appease our union members, and number two, ensure that we take the time to prove how much it should cost. I don't know, something stupid. But here's the problem. See, Denver Metro spends roughly, this is according to Common Sense Institute, roughly $481 million a year annually on the homelessness response.
How's that working out?
$500 million. And actually, I think those numbers are probably low.
I'm convinced at this point, Jason, that everything that the government spends money on is just a money laundering operation.
100%.
I mean, where else is this money going?
So here's the other fun one, right? So Denver is currently selling a property for $1 or something. Mm-hmm. In order to house the unhoused. Oh, here it is. Wait, here we go. I'm going to pull it off. Pull it up.
Pull it off, and pull it down.
It's $10, right? So Colorado Motel is for sale for $10. This one is the K99.com is reporting this one. However, it's been reported everywhere. But basically, the Daily Mail reports that the Stay Inn Motel, a 96-room motel in Denver, is for sale for, yes, $10. The price is amazing. There is one major thing to consider before you look into purchasing the property. First of all, there are a ton of renovations and repairs the owner will need to make on their own dime. Also, the city of Denver purchased the motel in 2023 for $9 million. The city of Denver is requiring the buyer to transform the former hotel into housing for the homeless. Additionally, the buyer must commit that the property remains low-income housing for the next 99 years. So what are they going to do? They're going to give this to some developer for $10 and then probably still collect plenty of money along the way to house these individuals from the government. So basically, yeah, money laundering.
Yeah, and if you look at I just Googled 16th Street Mall. Westward had an article a week ago. Locally owned 16th Street Mall pizzeria is closing. 3 weeks ago, Denver Post, 16th Street Mall stabbing suspects, path marked by mental illness, homelessness, drug use. Denver Gazette, next article, how safe is Denver's 16th Street Mall, was the title of the article. And then you get to Denver seeks $1.9 million to rebrand and reactivate 16th Street Mall after major construction.
Don't forget that they allow these like giant riots to take place.
Sure.
And then they're breaking windows of buildings.
Right.
Like it's so sad, but it's also not, because these are the same people. Like I remember back the BLM riots, there was a bookstore downtown that got just absolutely demolished in the riots. And they're sitting there crying about, their store windows. But these are the same people that have BLM flags up, the
right.
same people that have the flag, trans rights or human rights, all these they're wokeists. Because every bookstore owner tends to be a wokist, it seems.
Wokist. I like that. That's a new term, I feel like.
I don't think it is.
A wokist. It's like being a Catholicist.
I just, what else do you call them? Like the woke impaired?
Woker.
The woker?
A woker.
The Woking Dead?
The Woking Dead. That's good. Let's make that into a movie. Angel Studios.
Wait, that's the Social Security payments that we're still giving out to the 400-year-olds.
Abraham is getting a Social Security check, ladies and gentlemen.
Good old Abe Lincoln. Actually, I think it's as far as George Washington.
Right.
Actually, to be honest with you, there are people receiving Social Security checks that predate the
Social Security Administration. They don't even try anymore.
That's what it would look like.
Yeah.
That's what it would look like. I've always wondered, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, we have all around the country, the clerk and recorder's office of every county is responsible for issuing the death certificate. And I don't understand in this day and age, after we've quote unquote put a man on the moon, maybe you don't believe it, but quote unquote we have, okay? We've put a man on the moon.
Did I just violate an FCC law?
But yet, I don't know.
Okay, sorry.
But yet, we cannot manage to electronically communicate with every single department that somebody is dead.
You would think there'd be some coordination.
We can't remove them from the voter roll.
Sure.
Like take them out of the Social Security bank.
No,
like
it's a scam.
Cancel their Medicare.
It's somebody's gig. There's a criminal running a Social Security scam, and we're finding out.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
It's nuts. And George Washington is receiving payments.
George Washington should be the only one getting a payment.
Well, you know what? They got to keep... Does he even have a library?
I don't know.
Does he have a presidential library?
He should.
I feel like some of these people just should not have presidential libraries, but then we have some that don't have presidential libraries that should.
Now, there's a couple stories on my radar. Do you want to jump into that, or did you want to?
Let's do it.
Okay,
I think we're done with homelessness.
Yeah, President Trump signs executive order to protect religious freedom on February 15th, 2025. President Trump signed an executive order aimed at protecting the religious freedom of Christians in the United States. The order ensures that Christian organizations and businesses will not face discrimination or penalties for adhering to their faith. Now, I'm going to say that I have a problem with executive orders. I think that they've been abused. I understand the spirit of this. I understand it's red meat for MAGA and his base. But that pendulum can swing both ways. And that's the problem with executive orders, because we'd all have our panties in a bunch if this was a Democrat saying that this needed to be the case for Muslims, or if this needed to be the case for some group that we didn't like, and we needed to enshrine special protection. I think we need to be consistent, and that we don't create special classes of people, and that we don't abuse the process of executive order, that anything that's legislative needs to be passed by an act of Congress. Thoughts, Jason?
And the problem is that if another president comes in, this is an executive order is so easy to overturn.
Sure.
Right. And do I agree with them? Yes. Do I think that Christian businesses have been discriminated against for the last, 12 of the last 16 years? All throughout the Obama administration, then all throughout the Biden administration, which counts for 12 of the last 16 years, Christian businesses have been discriminated against. This does, however, create in a way, an argument over states' rights. Colorado has some of the most aggressive public accommodation laws, which has been the battle in Colorado for the last 10 plus years over the cake baker and the website designer and the photographer and anybody that goes, I am not providing services for your homosexual wedding or for something that does not align with your What was the last one that they sued the baker for was a transgender reveal cake.
He wasn't going to make a Subaru on the cake or something to that nature.
It was a transgender.
I know the Subaru
reveal.
joke. Get it?
Yes,
Okay.
I get it.
All right.
I get it.
But
anyways,
funny. But you get my point that we already have a First Amendment constitutional right in this country
do we?
on paper.
Okay.
So if we already have this enshrined in our documents, why are we extrajudicially passing executive orders that can easily be overturned when we could just enforce the laws that are already on the books?
Because states have laws presently that allow for the discrimination against Christian businesses that must be challenged at the Supreme Court level.
So I think a responsible president would have gotten all the governors together and urged them and their state houses to repeal those laws. But I think what we do is we have
urged the governors to repeal the laws?
Well, get the momentum started and say, you guys need to start talking to your House legislatures.
Hey, Mr. Newsom. Hey, Governor Polis. I know that, you won't like this, but I need you to remove your public accommodation laws.
Now, that's obviously what's going to happen, and your point is it's going to be ineffective. I understand that. But the reality is I think Trump is just having his moment. Look at me. Look what I'm doing for my people.
I don't disagree with you, but at the end of the day, everything that comes out of Trump's mouth and the rhetoric that comes out of Trump's mouth does end up being productive in some way, shape, or form. Even if it sounds absolutely insane, it serves some back-end purpose, right? It's not about the words that come out of your mouth. It's about the meaning behind them and what you're going to do about it, right? What you going to do about it?
What you going to do?
So there are some issues. I'm glad that Trump is bringing them to light. It probably will not just pass on executive order. This is going to require either the federal government to act or states to act or the Supreme Court to act.
And just to give a little more detail to our listeners, NBC is reporting that the executive order called Promoting Free Speech and Religious Liberty also gives regulatory relief to companies that object to an Obamacare mandate for contraception and healthcare. That builds on the 2014 Hobby Lobby Supreme Court case, which found that the Affordable Care Act mandate that certain corporations must provide female employees with no-cost access to contraception was a violation of the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. So I think that this is like rhetorically good stuff. I obviously agree with the spirit of all this. I just have a problem with the process. I really think we have a carnival barker in the White House who's trying to appeal to his base, and he's passing executive orders that I disagree with, and he should have done the thing that would have been ineffective had he really meant it, which is going to the governors and asking to repeal some of these anti-Christian laws, and then actually at the state level implementing or protecting those who have been abused by some of these cases with under the First Amendment protection. That's what I think.
Let me help you out. Precedent. The problem is that the Democrats have set precedent for this type of behavior. Mm-hmm. And I will warn you, those of you that ever sit on a bylaws committee, that if you change the bylaws to appease your side now, at some point they will be used against your side. And here the Democrats have set a precedent that they can rule by executive order at the state level and the federal level. Mm-hmm. And because they set that precedent when the Republicans came in, they followed the precedent that had previously been set. And the executive orders have gotten more and more and more and more and more aggressive, and probably less and less and less constitutional.
Sure.
Now, the Democrats just set another precedent. The Democrats said, well, it is okay to pardon everybody on the face of the earth for any crime that they have committed unless you're a January 6er. That's their present argument. Mm-hmm. Joe Biden just released every single person on death row practically. Unless they were unless they had committed a terrorist act. But if you were a murderer, you got let out by Biden. But my gosh, somebody that stood in the Capitol and didn't harm anybody no, we can't release them. Mm-hmm. Maybe they should have killed somebody. They would have ended up out of jail, according to the Dems.
Mm-hmm. According to the Dems, yeah, make sure you say that part.
But that's the precedent that's been set. Do I agree with the precedent? No. I have said for a long time, especially during the COVID crisis, the government should never be ruled by executive order. We have a legislature for a reason. We need to get back to that. And the Supreme Court at some point is going to have to say, enough of this nonsense. We're not doing it anymore.
So you're justifying all these executive orders because of the precedent set by the Democrats?
I'm not justifying any of them. I'm saying that it needs to go away.
Okay.
But what Trump is doing is just matching a precedent.
Okay.
Does it make it right? No. Does he need to go through the legislature? Yes. Do we need all the presidents to go through the legislature? Yes. Do we need to remove any executive order that's ever been written by any president, including Trump, all at once and say we're never doing this again? Yes.
I love it.
But if we are not going to get to that point, then sure, Trump, go do your executive orders. You're following precedent.
Okay. Christian school wins landmark case against DEI policies. A Christian school in Texas won a significant legal battle against the implementation of diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. The court ruled that forcing the school to adopt these policies would violate its religious liberty and freedom of speech. I wish we had the round of applause sound effect. Let's celebrate some wins. I mean, this is a win, don't you think?
It is a win, but here's the problem, and it goes back to
Debbie Downer over here, man.
It goes back to the previous conversation. It goes back to the necessity of Trump doing what he's doing. There are different rules for different types of entities. Okay? So if you are a 501c8, you're exempt from pretty much everything because you're a church. But in order to be classified as a church, to be exempt from the LGBTQ plus A, XYZ, WXY, 99, I'm a dog, okay, you have to be a church. Well, then they came along, and now there's the argument, well, maybe 501c3s are going to be exempt, but no, they're not, because they have to be charitable organizations and support the population, or we're going to remove your tax-exempt status. Well, now you have private businesses. Well, you're not a private business because you service the public. This is literally the law in Colorado. You're not a private business if you serve the public in any way, shape, or form. So in the state of Colorado, we don't have private entities. It doesn't exist.
That doesn't make any sense to me.
If you are open to the public and the public can walk in out off the street, you are a public entity, not a private entity.
But a public entity historically has always been a government agency.
Oh, no, not in the state of Colorado. It's anybody that's open to the public.
So we're butt backwards in Colorado.
Correct.
Okay.
So the problem is, and this is why we have the issues that almost all of the landmark cases that have come out of religious freedom and business practices have come from the state of Colorado, because they've all made it to the Supreme Court because we have some of the stupidest public accommodation laws in the world. And how stupid are public accommodation laws, and I know I've talked about this on the show, but just to remind you, we do not have a anti-discrimination against religion. It's discrimination based on creed. What is creed? One strongly held belief. You cannot discriminate me based on my creed. How stupid is that? So you know what I did during COVID-19? You're discriminating against me because I don't want to wear a mask. Well, yeah, because it's my strongly held belief that I don't want to wear a mask. Battle that.
It seems like we're playing semantics.
It is semantics. It's what I said before the show when you and I were talking. It's about the definition, and if you have to keep changing the definition to incorporate whatever you want to do politically, your definition was wrong to begin with, or you just shouldn't do it. Mm-hmm. So here we are. We're like, okay, well, we've taken this discrimination thing to a whole new level. First, it was you can't discriminate on race. You can't discriminate based on religion. Okay? But for who? Who does that protect? Is that the government can't or private business? Well, private business can't. Okay, well, now we're going to take it one step forward. Now you can't discriminate based on gender. Okay, males and females, equal opportunity, sure. But now it's sexual orientation. Now you've kind of gone a little bit crazy. Now we're going to add creed, one strongly held belief. Now we've just taken it to absurd levels. So now you can't discriminate against me because I strongly believe that aliens exist. You understand how stupid this is? Like, do you understand how absolutely absurd it is that businesses in Colorado do not have the right to refuse service? Because they don't. All those signs that are plastered on restaurants, we have the right to refuse service to anybody. No, you don't. Not in the state of Colorado. Try me. I'll make a point.
Is that why the baker had to go to the Supreme Court?
Correct.
Yeah.
And what's the other thing is sometimes we celebrate wins that really aren't wins.
So you don't think this is a win?
It is a win, but it's not a win.
Okay.
It is a win, but it's not a win because we're talking about a private school, right? We're not talking about the rest of the private businesses. We're not talking about every other state. The problem with the cake baker was this, okay? What the Supreme Court ruled that nobody actually read or understood the Supreme Court ruling was that the cake baker was not held liable because he still offered them a cake, just not a custom cake.
Yeah, I'm not convinced, Jason. And when I look at this case, this is Christy Higgs, a 49-year-old Christian school administrator who won her 6-year legal battle against Farmers School in Gloucestershire, England. Actually, this isn't even a U.S.-based story, so judge me.
I thought you said Texas. Oh, this is a different story.
This is the Christian school worker winning the landmark free speech case after being fired for social media posts.
Oh, this is not the same one that we just discussed.
This is different, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. So this one is, and that's my fault. But this issue with the school administrator is that she had posted some content being critical of the LGBT inclusive education in the primary school system. And the Court of Appeals ruled unanimously that her firing was unquestionably a disproportionate response, setting a crucial precedent for protecting freedom of belief in the workplace. So,
and this is in the UK?
This is in the UK.
Oh, that's huge.
Yeah, it's very big.
That is huge because the UK is more woke than we are.
And I apologize to my listeners. I cross wires on the stories, but this story that I'm referring to in the UK about Christy Higgs and the LGBTQ Facebook post gave her the ability to be exonerated as a Christian, publicly voicing her biblically held beliefs that this content should not be in the school system. And I want to applaud our friends across the pond for this.
Yeah. We have a freedom to assemble. We have a freedom to associate. And the problem with half of this attack on the Christian community is that they're saying you don't have the right to associate.
Right.
Right. And then you don't have the right to stand strong in your beliefs. And it's completely different when you are a government entity that is discriminatory, which, by the way, the government has been discriminating against single people for a very long time.
How's that?
Why do you give tax breaks to married people?
Oh, that's their argument.
That's my argument. Like, at the end of the day, here's the problem. We wouldn't need federal gay marriage if you didn't have tax breaks and incentives for being married.
Okay. So you don't agree with tax breaks for married people?
Should the government give incentives to people that are married?
Are you asking me the question?
Yeah.
Selfishly, I love it.
Well, we all selfishly love it. I just got married.
Yeah, you got married.
I got married this year, so they won't show on my taxes till 26.
Right. I think the logic behind that is rooted in our nation's history, which used to value marriage and family and wanted to procreate, wanted to increase the birth rate and foster family in the nation. And I think that it was that ideal that inspired the tax breaks.
But it doesn't matter because you are punishing those that are not married.
I don't know if that's by not providing a incentive. I don't think is the equivalent of punishment.
It's a lack of omission.
It's omission, but it's not. It's like saying, "Oh, well, you're punishing me."
Yeah, you're paying higher taxes.
It's
for
like
not
saying
being married.
It's like saying Great Wolf Lodge is punishing my 7-year-old son because they're not letting him on the ride because he's not tall enough.
It's no, but that's a whole nother situation because it's unsafe.
Yeah, I don't think
there's a safe it's a completely different argument. But at the end of the day, like, we have tax breaks for having children.
I think if the single people are paying taxes fairly and they're being assessed fair taxation, and then we give a benefit to somebody who decides to create a family and be a net positive to society, I don't think that's punishing the single person.
But the problem is that's why we have the argument that won, which was you're discriminating against me because I choose to get married to somebody else.
Well, that's manipulative weaponization.
100%. But the problem is that you have discriminated against a group of people. The single people out there, even though I'm married now, the single people out there should be absolutely pissed off at the fact that they do not receive the same benefits as somebody that is married.
Well, I go back to the definition of marriage. If you're two men, you can't be married because the definition of marriage is between a holy union between a man and a woman.
The problem is we've changed the etymology of all of these words.
Yeah, you're not allowed to do that.
And we've allowed it to happen.
Sure.
And when you allow it to happen, and when you give away the little bits, guess what happens after that? Everything else crumbles and falls to pieces. When it comes down to it, when it comes to the marriage argument, the government should not be involved in marriage to begin with. We don't need the government involved in marriage. Marriage is an agreement before God, not before man, not before government. It was an institution that was created by God. And we have this obsession with the fact that like God's commands and God's institutions were created for Christians, not for the secular world. And yet we try to force it on the secular world, and then we allow the secular world to go like we're going to change that institution, and that's like totally wrong. But at the end of the day, like if you want to look at discrimination, if you want to look at the First Amendment right, the First Amendment right, your right to freedom of speech is protected in the public square. It's always been in the public square. And that's what we forget is we want to apply the First Amendment right to private business. It doesn't apply to private business. Nothing applies to private business.
You're referring to the entity.
I'm referring to the entity.
But I think a lot of times we're talking about the individual business owner.
Correct. But what the government has done is they've redefined what a public entity is. And when you redefine a public entity to include every single business, every single nonprofit organization, now all of a sudden your First Amendment right exists because you've created a public square. Because under the definition of the government, you're now a public entity and you've created a public square. It goes back to the argument of, can Facebook censor content? Well, that depends. Did Facebook create a public square? You have to answer that question first. Did X create a public square? Did Instagram create a public square? If they created a public square, then no, you cannot censor speech. If they continue to maintain their private entity status where they are a private business, then you would say, no, Facebook can censor all that they want because they're not a public square. Just like the Dallas Cowboys can tell their players, no, you cannot kneel for the national anthem because your First Amendment right to freedom of speech does not apply here. And you can't have it, you can't have all of the different ways that you want it and not want it at the same time. You have to define what something is, and then your law is created off of that definition. But we allowed them to redefine what a public entity was in the state of Colorado, and that's why we've had the problems that we've had. And so if Trump wants to actually make a difference in this boat and in this plan, he needs to redefine federally through the legislature, and it needs to go to the Supreme Court for the Supreme Court to uphold it, but to redefine what public accommodation is and what is a public entity versus a private entity and what private entity needs to do, what the private sector needs to do to maintain their religious freedoms.
Wow. Well said. I don't think that we're ever going to solve this problem until we change the etymology of the words and until we actually follow through with the constitutional rights that we have. I think we've veered so far away from the Constitution that it's disgusting. But speaking of marriage, a controversial bill banning gay marriage has been reintroduced in Congress. A bill aimed at banning gay marriage nationwide has been introduced, sparking heated debates among lawmakers and citizens alike. Christian groups have been vocal in their support of the bill, citing religious reasons for their stance. Have you heard of this?
Different variations of it, but yes.
It's interesting because it's like protection, from scary Trump, right? We're going to go ahead and kind of take a preemptive move against this new administration by passing these bills. Again, this is just, I don't think there's much to discuss. I think this should have never happened to begin with.
So California's last ballot initiative was so open-ended in the interpretation that you could probably go marry a tree in California.
Not surprised.
Because what these people have done is, once again, back to the etymology of words, they've redefined what love is. And I don't know if we might have talked about this last week.
Love is love.
So they've redefined what love is. Love in today's culture is a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
love in biblical times and before this was not a feeling, it was an action, it was a choice, it was a verb. You chose to love somebody. It wasn't a feeling. And because we've redefined it as a feeling, now you've said, okay, divorce is okay because you no longer love them. Okay?
I fell out of love.
Then what we did was we told everybody that they had the right to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
You have the right to be happy. So what did the gays do? They took it and they redefined the word gay. They said, well, we all have the right to be happy, so we're just really happy and we have the right to be happy. Well, now we have the right to be happy and we have the right to love somebody, right? We have the right to love whatever we want. In California now, it could probably be a tree and a dog and a whatever. And pretty soon, your 13-year-old child, your 8-year-old child, your 3-year-old child, because some teacher's going to be like, but I choose to love them and they love me.
That's where
and
it's
love
going.
Is a feeling.
That's where
I
it's
deserve
going.
to be happy.
Thank you.
And I can be happy. And
Yes.
so, Mom and Dad, I am marrying your 3-year-old.
Damn the people who use the term minor attracted person. Damn them to hell.
Like that is the road that we are on.
That's why in 2008, when I was living in California and they were trying to pass this gay marriage bill, I was staunchly opposed to it, and I was called a bigot, and I was anti-gay and all this rhetoric. But I did it not because I had this really big issue with two consenting adults doing what they wanted to do in their bedroom. I had a problem with the fact that I knew where this road was going to lead us, and it was going to lead us to hell, where they were going to abuse children.
At the end of the day, the way out, though, is to take away the benefits, the federal benefits of marriage. And that's the argument I was making to begin with. If you take away the federal benefits of marriage and everybody has the same playing field, now you can be like, you know what? Marriage is between a church and its congregants, and between God and its congregants. And if you want to go find a woke church that's ready to marry you, that's fine. The pastor's probably going to be seen in hell. All right?
Yeah.
So give it back to the churches, take the government out of it, and say we're no longer discriminating based on marital status, and therefore we have nothing to do with marriage. We don't need to record it. We don't need to follow it. We don't need to plan it. We don't have anything to do with it from a federal level or from a state level or a government level or a county level. Doesn't matter. We don't have anything to do with it. It's between you and your God, ordained by your pastor and your God. And if you can find somebody that's woke enough and liberal enough to, inside of the walls of a church, marry you to a tree, then vengeance belongs to the Lord, and God will deal with you how he wants.
It's important that we as the church continue to stick to the mission of preaching the gospel, living righteously, living in the light. By our conduct, we will draw people to the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. Because all of these conversations that we're having is about what the government should do, shouldn't do. The reason we're even having this show and this program, Jason, is because we want to be able to influence the culture from the inside, a bottom to top strategy. That if we are the salt and light that we were commanded to be, we're not going to have these conversations.
But I think so much of it is we're picking the wrong battles. And we don't have a huge amount of time left on today's show. So I will close this off as my rant and give Aaron a chance to do his rant, and we'll pick this up another day. But we have to make sure that we're choosing the right battles, because so many times we like to argue both sides of the coin. And we shouldn't, because at the end of the day, we know that we as Christians are separate from this world.
Yes.
We are different from this world. And yet we try to take our beliefs and apply them to the secular world. Well, God's law is really for God's people, and God's institutions are for God's people. And when we've tried to force them on the secular world, we find ourselves into a lot of troubles. And so we have to make sure that we are fighting the right battles. We have to make sure that we are picking the right battles to fight. And at this point, the better argument for gay marriage is to attack the fact that there should be no federal benefits for married individuals and put everybody back in the same playing field. Because until you do that, You don't disarm your opponent, because your opponent still has the fact that the government's discriminating against me. And you know what? They're right. If we eliminate gay marriage, they are right. They are right that there is discrimination against them. So take away their weaponry and take away the federal benefits of being married.
Love it. I agree with everything you said, Jason. And I would conclude with this. I just read a recent article that covered some surveys that Christian nationalism is on the rise. And I couldn't agree more, and I couldn't support this idea more, because when I read scripture and it says we are to be salt and light, I interpret that as we are to infiltrate and occupy every institution of influence on this country. So we're not to live in a bubble and just have these institutions and have these commands and how we're to live our lives inside of a vacuum privately. We are to go in and start production companies. We're to run for Congress. We're to become inventors and innovators and business owners. And we're going to influence the culture, and we're going to change the culture for Christ by being actively involved. And this idea of Christian nationalism is this idea that the United States was founded by Christians and that the law is based on biblical morality. And I am unashamedly for that. And if you don't like it, there's a airport or a train station nearby.
Yes. And as, what is it, Looney Tunes would say, that's all, folks.
That's all, folks.
There you go. That's all we got today. Go find us online, spiritualinsurgency.com. Send us a note if you just utterly disagree with us. We'd love to have you on the air. We'll bring you on. We'll have a conversation. And if you're a pastor out there that's interested in starting their Department of Government Efficiency in their church, let us know. We want to follow you. We want to report on it. We want churches everywhere to do this, because I'm pretty sure that the same ludicrous spending that's occurring in the government is also occurring in our churches. We better figure that out quickly, or, you know, we got to use God's resources appropriately.
Amen.
Amen. All right, join us every Saturday at 10 a.m. and also 8 p.m. at night. We will see you next Saturday. Hang on until then.
Peace.
Thank you for joining us today on Spiritual Insurgency with Jason Lupo and Aaron Lujan. For more information or to support the mission of Spiritual Insurgency, visit spiritualinsurgency.org. Join us next Saturday and every Saturday at 10 a.m.